It is my great pleasure to introduce my teammate, my colleague, Katherine Noble-Goodman, who works with me here at Solutions Journalism. She is a writer, educator, and social entrepreneur, and has reported on philanthropy, education, religion, and the environment. She's also taught environmental studies in green philanthropy, education, and religion. And her bio is up on the website, so I'm not going to read through the whole thing, but it's my pleasure actually this is a great follow on from the questions that just came out. It's my great pleasure to have Katherine here to talk about the work that we do outside of training journalists. So I'm just going to turn it over to you, Katherine, and let you go. I do want to say that we're going to have a 5-minute break after Katherine's presentation, so just be prepared for that. So Katherine, it's over to you.
Great, thank you. Yes, it's exciting to be here. I wish we actually could have all traveled to be in the same room together over in the Czech Republic, but that's alas not what's happening. I'm over on the West Coast of the United States. So yeah, what an interesting discussion so far. It's a great pleasure to listen to journalists talk about their reporting from a solutions perspective. And as Fara mentioned, at the Solutions Journalism Network, we are primarily what we do is we support and train journalists to do solutions reporting. But we also we have a small team that works to amplify the impact of these stories. We gather these stories together into a database that Fara mentioned. It's called the Solutions Story Tracker. We make that available to anyone, but we particularly work to get the database and the stories, and then collections of stories that we create based on the stories in the database into the hands of people who we really think can benefit most from the knowledge and insights in these stories. And I'm going to sort of tell you a little bit about how we do that. I started out my career, as I mentioned, as a journalist, so I know how important it is to understand, hope when you write a story that it's going to have impact. When we're talking about something as pressing as important as climate change, climate solutions, and sustainability and the UN Sustainable Development Goals, I know this is something that you're all very interested in, and data shows us that writing from a solutions perspective can be a very impactful way to do that. So I have some slides. I'm going to start my. Let me see. I think if I click on start my video, is that going to? Let's see.
I believe, Katherine, you just need to share your screen.
Okay, hold on. Let me go back at the bottom here real quick. Okay, yeah, so it's just a regular share screen way. Okay, there we go. That should be there. And then I'm going to do presenter view. Come on, here we go. Okay, do you see a cartoon character that looks upset?
Yes, we do.
Okay, perfect. So as we all know, the news is really heavily weighted toward the negative, which is counterproductive to the media contributing to an engaged and informed citizenry in general. And it's particularly pressing and important now when we're talking about something like climate change. At this point in time, we really have a set of significant problems that we really need to act on. And there isn't any getting away from the fact that a lot of the news about climate change and sustainability as well is doom and gloom. But if people don't also know about what is working, they can lose hope, which is what I imagine is happening to the person in this depiction here. A fellow named Anthony Leiserowitz at Yale University. Maybe some of you have heard of him. He's a researcher. He studies. He's at the Yale University Center for Climate Communication. And in 2015, he came up with this term, the hope gap, which is the gap between being concerned about the changing climate and actually doing something about it. And this particularly applies even to people who are really alarmed about climate change. They know about it, but they just don't know what the solutions are. And they don't have hope. And especially they don't have something called constructive hope. This obviously isn't good for the person in this drawing, and it's not good for society and for our potential to respond appropriately to the climate crisis. So in 2019, research is obviously going on all the time about how to best communicate about climate change to the public. And a study that was reported in 2019 showed that instilling something called constructive hope, more than false hope or just sort of feeling good information, can motivate people to action. And that's really the type of hope that solid solutions journalism reporting brings to readers. It's hope that's based on seeing how others are acting and coming to believe that collective awareness about climate change is increasing. So constructive hope is really a social phenomenon, and solutions-focused reporting can help increase this type of hope in society. And so the stories that include the 4 pillars of solutions journalism that some of you may be familiar with aren't fluff, and it's not false hope, but they're really, it's really showing how others are taking action, ongoing action. You've just heard from a couple of reporters who have done this type of reporting, and some of the resources I'm going to show you highlight some of their stories as well. So, I'm going to jump into that, but I just want to make a quick pitch for if you're not doing this type of reporting and you're interested in learning more about solutions journalism, we have trainings. Fara just mentioned one of those. We have one coming up on later this week, just a quick 101 webinar on how to do solutions reporting. And if you can't do that, we also have this 2-hour-long toolkit that you can use to get started on solutions reporting. And you can find all of this on our webpage. But back to what I'm here to talk to you about, when you do a solution story, make sure you submit it to the story tracker, which is the database that Fara mentioned and I've mentioned. And that's really, it's from that resource that we're able to do the work that we do to amplify your stories. So here's what the story tracker looks like. We gather stories, solutions journalism stories together. We have a team of 6 people who do this, who have a specialty in different areas. So we have someone who specializes in climate and sustainability. We read the stories, we make sure they're solutions journalism, and then we tag them for searching. So anybody, we make this available to the public, can come to the story tracker to search for stories by issue area, by strategy, by UN Sustainable Development Goal, by location, by journalist, and read a summary of the story, and then you hop off to the actual page where the story was initially published. When we first started this work to amplify the impact of these stories and get them into the hands of people we felt could really use them, we started in education. That's what seemed to make the most sense to us. We work primarily with college professors, with college students and professors, to make them aware of solutions journalism, how they can find these stories, and help them with ideas for how to integrate them into assignments in all different classes. So you can see this extends way beyond just climate solutions and sustainable development goals. We've worked with educators in all kinds of disciplines. A few of them are on this slide. But this all started 3 years ago with a single class called Making a Difference, Problems for Solving Social Problems at a school called Claremont College in Southern California. And as of the last time we did a survey, which we're just about to do another survey, more than 10,000 students, so these are non-journalism students, just students in a variety of disciplines, had been exposed to a solutions journalism story. So a story that one of you may have written as part of an assignment for a class or as part of a research project. And we got started doing this by just connecting with individual educators, giving presentations at conferences, and then starting to partner with other nonprofit organizations. And for the first time in 2021, we are set up to deliver at least 4 different academic conference papers in sociology and anthropology and a couple other disciplines to demonstrate to other educators the value of using this type of reporting, these type of stories in educating students across disciplines. We also give, a few of us on staff at SJN give presentations to classes, again, not journalism classes, but to students in different disciplines to sort of, they're sort of media literacy type publications, but really we're working to get more and more journalists know what solutions journalism is. We want the rest of the public to know what is solutions journalism, where can I find these stories, and why should I be reading them? Okay. So that's how we got started, mainly in education, working directly with educators. We all now also partner with nonprofit organizations, and I want to highlight a few of those because they're related to climate solutions and sustainability. So one of them is an organization called Project Drawdown that I'm guessing several of you have probably heard of. They're based in the United States, but their mission is to provide information on how we can reduce greenhouse gas emissions as quickly and safely and equitably as possible, to the point where we're then drawing down, and that's where the name comes, drawing CO2 and related gases out of the atmosphere. So Drawdown a couple of years ago launched a program called Drawdown Learn. And that's when we started partnering with them, because our focus had been primarily on how to get these stories to educators to use in the classroom. Drawdown Learn works to engage and inspire both youth and adults by connecting them to the science behind climate change. And so our role then is to provide them with resources so that their educators, their viewers, their community members can say, okay, this is the science, and I want to read about how somebody somewhere in the world is doing this. And because we have a real strength in reporting on climate solutions, we have more than 500 stories in the story tracker on climate solutions, and about half of them line up with Project Drawdown solutions. So it was kind of an obvious fit that we would take stories like these. These are just some headlines from some stories that are in collections. And actually a couple of these are, I think all three of these journalists are part of the Inkline project that Julie mentioned. And so we find stories that are relevant in the story tracker to these drawdown solutions. In this case, alternatives to cooking over open flames, the sharing economy, and then charcoal, talking about something called biochar and adding that into cattle feed to reduce methane emissions. So we find stories like this, and then we put them into something that we call collections. And these collections, each one includes 3, 4, 5, or 6 stories on a particular topic. So you can see here one on clean cook stoves, one on the sharing economy, one on biochar uses in production, one on food waste. So we gather these together, we add discussion questions and teaching notes. And when we first started putting these together, we really had educator audience in mind. But what we found is that community leaders, people are giving presentations in their an organization that, maybe at work or in a volunteer organization, use these as well. So we're actually shifting the language around a little bit so they are more obviously open and available to anyone. You don't have to be an educator to use these, but they come with a description of the stories and a brief description of the stories, and like I said, discussion prompts and more notes about the stories. And each of the stories in these collections obviously was published somewhere else. So your story was published, a solutions journalism story is published by the media outlet. It has that impact, but then once it gets into the story tracker and then can be used in a resource like this, that really continues the life and the impact of the story. It's really extended and expanded. Just some data as an example. In November, 111 people came to the story tracker to search for stories on climate solutions. This food waste collection that I have up here was viewed by educator students, we don't know exactly who, 71 times in October and another 52 times in the first 2 weeks of September. Food and climate solutions are, food-related solutions to climate change are very popular. And we have some collections on the benefits of a plant-rich diet, which those collections were viewed 80 times in the first couple of weeks of November. And I'll put these, let me see, I was going to try to put these collections into the chat if I can find that real quick. Nope, that's not it. Oh, hold on one second. Here it is. So you can look at these later yourself if you would like. Okay, so so that is our partnership with, whoops, I went a slide ahead, with some collections that we did specifically for EcoChallenge, for Project Drawdown. Another project that's really been exciting for us related to climate and sustainability is with an organization called EcoChallenge. And they're smaller, but very impactful organization that hosts these online sort of gamification challenges related to sustainability and climate change throughout the year. So they're people that belong to this organization or learn about it. They sign up for like a 3-week period to take certain actions. And within each of the actions, so this, an example of that is here, support a sharing economy or explore other food, agriculture, and land use solutions. There's a button that you can click on, learn more, and then that takes you to a solutions journalism collection on that topic. So when we first launched this, this project, the first EcoChallenge that we participated in was in 2019, and they had 14,000 participants. 4,000 of those individuals clicked on this Learn More tab and then read, came to our website and read a solutions journalism story or collection of stories on anything ranging from methane digesters to regenerative agriculture to various food related climate solutions, indigenous land management, educating girls. So just a wide range of topics. And from EcoChallenge's perspective, these stories really give their participants both knowledge and inspiration, sort of helping cultivate that constructive hope that I talked about at the beginning by seeing what others, by reading about what others are doing in real legitimate news articles. And we provide all of these resources for free, and people can come use them and adapt them. We do that all through a Creative Commons license. And then finally, just a couple more, we, one of our partners with, it's focused more on the Sustainable Development Goals, is an organization called ASHE, the American Association for Sustainability in Higher Ed. And again, we have 17 collections that we've created or co-created with them on the UN Sustainable Development Goals. This one here, I'm gonna put these two into the chat. But the collection on sustainable consumption and production actually has a story by, an ink-line story by Julia on ethical and sustainable fashion. So if you click on that, you can read the story that she wrote there. So again, these are through these partner organizations. They, ASHE hosts webinars for educators. They have centers for teaching sustainability across the curriculum. And so these resources that are created using solutions journalism stories are made available on our website, but then also through these partner organizations. So why do we do this work to make these stories available to students, educators, and interested citizens? I mean, why do we do this? Why do we think this is so important? Well, we do it for 3 reasons, and I mean others, but the 3 on the slide. We really want to get these stories into the hearts and minds of students, to key actors in society who we believe can benefit most from learning how others are working to solve social problems. So those individuals, we started with students and educators, but also nonprofit organizations, philanthropists, potentially policymakers. Secondly, we want to raise public awareness about solutions journalism, and thereby eventually creating demand for this type of reporting. It's kind of hard to measure that, track how that happens, but we know that the first step in that is for the public to understand what solutions journalism is, to know when they're reading a solution story, and to look for more of those stories. Besides just coming to the story tracker, knowing this publication does this, I'm going to read this this publication more. So we want people to know what it is, to be able to name it. And finally, and perhaps most importantly, we really are working to increase the supply of solutions journalism by helping journalists amplify the impact of your work, and therefore potentially do more of it. We know research tells us that solutions journalism stories have a greater potential to make a positive impact on society than non-solution stories on the same topic. And we know that as journalists, this is why you do this work. You care deeply about the impact that your stories have. And by doing this work that we do at SJN, we hope to amplify that impact and get more of these, as a result, get more of these stories into circulation. Let me see how much time I have left. One new way that we're doing this, I just want to share with you real quick that I'm really excited about, is a program called Journalist in the Classroom. And we started this last year. We've piloted this about 10 times now. And so if you are doing solutions journalism and you've got stories in the story tracker and you're interested in this, let me know. What we basically do is we match an educator who's using a story that you wrote or journalist wrote, and that the students are reading for class. And then we help facilitate the connection. So I'd set up the introductions, or someone else at SJN would set up the introductions between the journalist and the professor and any kind of preparation that's needed. And then the journalist, the journalist then comes to class, of course, on Zoom, and the students will have read one or more of the stories that you've written. And then what we ask is that you spend 20 minutes or so sort of telling your story, why you got into journalism, maybe solutions journalism in particular, and then the reporting of the story that the students read. And then I taught college in the past. I taught a lot online. I've been to a lot of Zoom sessions, and I can tell you that these sessions where a journalist is in class, the students light up. They are curious, they're interested. And so every time so far, a very lively discussion that has to be cut off because class is over ensues. And that's a quote there at the bottom from a journalist who recently participated in this, who said, "This was an amazing session. Such forums are helpful to journalists and provide a brilliant opportunity to learn and offer ideas." So if you're interested in that, now or in the future, please let me know. We think it's just a fantastic program and really does a lot to amplify the impact of a particular story. We do have a couple other little small things that we do, or I shouldn't say small things, but other resources that we make available to keep these stories in circulation and read again. We have a newsletter that comes out once a week called The Response that tends to pivot off of something recent that's happened in the news, and there's some commentary there. And then if you scroll down, you can see the rest of the page. You'd see that there's then 3 stories. And we also have something called Story Alerts, which we're about to launch a new version of this, but this is a way journalists can use this to stay in touch with ideas for stories. But news consumers and students, et cetera, can sign up. And then each time a new story on that topic is added to the database, they're alerted. And that hopefully also plays the role of getting people to reminding them that solutions journalism exists and to come back and check out some more stories.
And we're getting to time,
Yep.
Katherine. So
I'm just done.
Okay, awesome.
That was it.
It's done. All right.
It's done. Perfect.
We actually have a great question because
Okay.
we do have time for questions. So we have a question from Jeremy Drucker that I think is just really important. He says, do you get any pushback from some quarters that you are doing climate change activism? Or is there by now, at least among your audiences, an understanding that you're merely providing examples of constructive solutions that can help better the current situation?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, excellent question. No, not now. Yes, at first we had concerns about that. We actually had concerns about any movement from this purely education sector, so working with students and teachers. That's clearly, this is information, use it how you want, these stories. But with our partners, with our nonprofit partners, we're clear that both Project Drawdown and EcoChallenge are their focus is, and ASHE is education focused, is to get information to people. What they do with it is what they do with it. EcoChallenge is obviously what they're really doing is hoping for behavior change, but where our solutions journalism stories are under that learn more tab. So it's providing the information. We're providing the information through these stories. And yeah, so we haven't, I think we've hit the balance with that at this point. A good question.
Yeah, great question. Thank you so much, Katherine. We don't see any more questions in the chat. I'm gonna, or in the Q&A box, I'm gonna give just a second or two for folks if they have any burning questions. You can always find us at solutionsjournalism.org. And once we get in, and if you're a part of the LinkedIn group, you'll also be able to message us as well. So as I promised, we do have our last session, and our last session participants, our panelists, ready to go. But we're going to give everybody, let's say we're going to give everybody a 5-minute break just to take a breath, step away from your computer, reduce the Zoom fatigue. And so we will be back in 5 minutes, 5 minutes after whatever time zone you're in right now. All right. Thank you again, Katherine, for the great presentation. All right. We'll be back in 5 minutes. Thanks.